This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online
Look,
library
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for.
Maybe about half a year ago, I did a video about how the digital modeling Singularity was coming. That phrase was picked up by some point at Rob Chapman as well, or he also had that same thought. But the idea for me, and what I meant by this, was that there was going to be like a confluence of features and tones. And I guess what this really was, in my point of view, was like that the Chinese part of the market, like Hotone and Moore, and some of these Valton, however you say it, were kind of NUX as well, leading a little bit this kind of part of the race where essentially they were bringing in their own versions of NAM, conversions NAM. And there was actually a paper that came out last week, I think from Steve Atkinson, about Slimmable NAMs. So I think the NAM game is changing a little bit as well, and I guess we'll see how this is rolled out. But the real point was that essentially there was going to be this sort of like feature set that was pretty shared amongst even the cheapest modelers. So I think at the time I might have already tried the Sonic Cake Pocket Master, which is like a £70 piece of gear. The Velton GP5, I think it was £55 during Black Friday. So these pieces of gear that could do like the multi-effects thing, could run NAM captures, and also had like feature sets that would compete potentially with whether it be like a Fender Tone Master Pro, or even, you know, for instance, like the Line 6 Helix Stadium has come out, and that can't actually run NAM captures. And you think, well, okay. So I think we're actually getting closer now to the point where, because Fractal have confirmed that the next generation of modelling, whenever that comes, I don't think it's that imminent, but, you know, they're working on it, essentially, is kind of, I guess, the point, is going to be able to run NAM captures. And sort of the last kind of 4 weeks, it's been like, okay, there's a a Helix Stadium that comes out. There's a Fractal AM4 that comes out. There's an update for the Nano Cortex. There's an update for the Quad Cortex, which is quite meaningful, bringing about the second version of their capture stuff, which is now cloud-based, right? And then what else is there? The Fender Tone Master just did an update as well. It's been a really important and I think interesting sort of 4-week, maybe 3-week period. But I did kind of feel like actually this is more clearly than anything showed me that I think we're in sort of something like the end game. And what is happening is that these bits and pieces of gear are becoming very much like a computer with a touchscreen and some foot switches on the floor. And they're all quite similar in that regard. The guitar world being what it is, they all tend to have similar sorts of amp choices in there. It's kind of quite predictable what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of Fenders. You know, you'll get your Princeton, you'll get your Deluxe Reverb, you'll get your Twin. You'll get a Marshall JTM 45. You'll get a Plexi. You'll get a JCM 800. You'll probably get a Soldano SLO. You'll probably get some Mesa Boogie Mark type stuff. And this is basically across the entire modelling world, right? And this is like the model part of it. You know, you'll probably get something Dumble-ish, but oftentimes not an actual Dumble. I think Neural DSP and Fractal kind of have that part, which is a bit unique for them. So Cliff from Fractal actually owns an HRM, and Neural DSP have just modelled an actual ODS. But other than that, the actual model lists are going to look very similar, I think. Mostly because all of these things are based somewhat on something else from real life, right? So I think that has been the case for the longest time. There's only one brand that stands out amongst all of these, and that's Fractal, for having like the most amp models, and they have such a large array of them that I really don't see anyone catching up. Like, there's no sign of that happening. Helix got closest, and I think they had like 106 amp models, but now they've gone to Agora, they're back to like 16, so, or 40 odd if you count it in a certain way. So it's kind of like, I think Fractal are always going to be like the modeler that has the most amp models in it. It's just the way I feel about that. There's no sign that anyone else is catching up. Then I guess we're going to have a bit of a shorter list of companies that don't do profiling capturing yet. So at the moment, that's like Fractal kind of, right? They do the tone match thing on the Axe-Fx, but it's not really taken off in the same way as some of these later products. You've got Hotone doing it, you've got NuX doing it, you've got Veilton doing it, you've got... did Headrush do it? Possibly, possibly not. You've got Line 6 saying they're going to do it with proxy, so they must be working on that. You've got Fractal saying that they will run NAM. So even if you're not able to create profiles on the thing or captures on the thing, then I think the short list of people that have not necessarily... I don't think Fender have explicitly said that they're going to do this sort of thing at this point, but you'd imagine that this is something that every company now is kind of racing towards still, right? And so Fractal also confirmed that there would be a touchscreen on their new generation of things. So you're now in a state where basically every modeler is going to be a touchscreen thing, whatever that ends up looking like and however that's implemented, that is going to have a similar kind of pool of amps that they draw from. It's probably going to have, you know, relatively flexible foot switching, which is still the area which, like Fractal Line 6, I think have the edge on. And I guess this is the real key point that I've kind of come away from the Helix Stadium videos with, which is that some people will hear a big difference between things, some people won't. And I think in some ways it's a bit of a Rorschach test where you kind of hear what you want to hear. Like if you were thinking, I really want a Stadium, you probably listen to the old Helix models and go, actually, that sounds way worse. If you're someone who's like, you know, got a Fractal device already and you listen to the Helix versus Helix Stadium, you're thinking, I'm not really that interested anyway. You probably wouldn't hear as much of a difference. I have recently, my buddy's got one, David Beebe, and he's been really impressed by the UI and the UX, and you know, absolutely impressed by that, and was kind of commenting on the touchscreen. So this is, Beebs has got Fractal stuff, and he's got a quad cortex, but he's just saying it's like a really, really good touchscreen, like proper, done really well. And then my buddy Lewis Corbett has just borrowed mine, and he's really impressed with like the actual tones of the thing too. So I think, yeah, that for me is what I think is next, to be honest with you, is that everything is basically going to be like this. And the race now, because this is the key thing that I think is true, is that modelling tones have not leapt forward in the way that if you tried a modeler in 2015, for example, and 2025, that the experience is meaningfully, massively different. It is different, and it is incrementally improved over the years. But when you put a modeler in front of someone who's not used a modeler before, it's still essentially the basic same experience where it's like, well, that doesn't sound like an amp in a room. That's still the case. And here's the key thing. When people say it doesn't sound like my amps, I don't think they're meaning it doesn't stand up in an A/B test. I think what they're saying is this isn't making the tone or the experience that I want to hear from the thing. And I think that is still where there's a huge, huge array of things that can happen and that I think are going to happen, because there's still people that are like really happy with their Kempers and still think that the Kemper sounds the most amp-like, which to me shows that actually there's a chunk of people that are maybe not even creating their own profiles or captures, but are just happy playing, for instance, Michael Britt's tones that he's dialed in, or Tone Junkie's tones, and that essentially that got them closer to what they wanted to hear than anything else, which is totally valid and totally fine. But I also think it's what that means is for like a lot of other devices, I think, is there's still work to be done. And like that focus view in Helix Stadium might be the sort of thing that this future thing looks like. And there was the XY in Stadium where it's like you can actually assign your two like parameters to it, and you could automatically have it like scan through. Basically, you use the rubber band feature, and it takes 8 seconds to go between where you had it and put it back. You could just be dialing in like that and then finding it. And I think that is a bit of a crucial thing. There is one other area which I think is still a little bit tricky within the modelling world. So first of all, like at home dialing these things in is one thing. And I maybe there's no way around this, but when you actually get to playing the thing live, oftentimes you find things need to be a little bit different. Whether it's that you need to re-level your presets or re-level your snapshots. There are these key things that you have to do as part of the kind of operation of using a modeler and playing one live that I think still require improving. And I think that's where you're going to see these improvements continue to be. Like every device now is going to be connecting to wireless. Every device is going to have a touch screen. Every device is going to have a similar device list. And to be honest, what I think we can all probably consider is that the amp modelling parts of things have been accurate enough that you could fool people in an A/B test, but we haven't got to the point where you could actually stick this in front of someone in a room and convince them that it was like an amplifier that they were hearing, if it's not set up in a certain way or through their cab and stuff like that. And that's not really a modelling problem. I think it's just I don't know how you solve that, because basically if you give someone their amp through a totally different cab, it's not going to sound like their amp either. So I think it's one of these things where you kind of got to just turn off your brain that's going like, this doesn't sound like an amp, and say, does this sound like what I want to hear or not? And then the modeler's job will be to kind of help you craft your tone in that way. And we're still very much going through this lens of like, real analog gear that probably some of us have never touched. 80-90% of what is in one of these modelers. Like, I've owned, a few amps over the years, but I've never owned a twin. I have played a twin briefly, I've never owned a JTM 45. I've never owned a JCM 800. You know, does it matter how accurate these things are if you've never played the real thing anyway? Not, in my opinion, not so much as it matters, like, can you actually dial the thing in to get what you're looking for? And I think that is still where there's a huge degree of help that needs to be given to the average user and even the expert user, I think, because it's just things that, even if you've used these things a long time, you still come up against the same problems time and time again. Like, oh, you know, when I dialed that thing in, it's now like a bit fizzy, or like the bass seems to be a bit overpowering or whatever, or it's a bit barky when I turn it up, or, you know, the lead tone was too loud, or the cleans were too quiet relative to the rhythm tones, or when I came in the rhythm tones, they were too quiet. These are the kind of problems that I think that are there still to be solved. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, it's kind of tinkering it around the edges, I think, at this point, where it's like someone sort of goes ahead a little bit, like, oh, they've got a better touchscreen, or oh, they've got slightly better amp modeling, or oh, they've got poly synths now. I don't think there's huge leaps in the sort of way that marketing would lead you to believe in some ways. And I think your experience as a user, if you're coming to a modeler for the first time, is still going to be pretty much the same thing. It's like, even if you're using like a Kemper player or something that plays NAM captures, you're still kind of just looking through the thing, trying to find a tone that works for you. And that is the part that I think we need more help with. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.